find out how it was, and I just ran away for a few months, that's all.
Hi guys, it's our first Pop with Pallas radio show. We've got the wonderful Tony Kemp right over the edge there. He is our resident rock star, and he is the engineer for this podcast and radio show. And then my special guest, my mother, visiting from the U.S. And now I'm going to position this so that you can see me, and we're going to hope, fingers crossed, that this show goes well, because it's our inaugural one for Pop with Pallas. And Patricia today. Patricia being my mother,
Exactly.
not Patricia Sexton, who is with the Happiness Idea, who you have seen before. So how we have just a minute 56. We're trying this for the first time with intro music that I've never tried before, with well, the format, which is very similar to the Happiness Idea for all of those of you who watch the Happiness Idea. But we're going to talk about the power of passion, purpose, and personality, which is what POP stands for. And I'm going to be having guests on this show, which I'm going to explain to you when we start, describing how they make their lives pop. So that's the concept, and for all of you watching, it's going to air on this page and then a couple of other pages. I'm going to move it around a bit. But I want to say hi, Tony, because we can't get you in this, as always. There we go. We get the mellifluous tones of Tony Kemp to join us on this show, too. I'm feeling very lucky. Yes. I might move that way, and then I can still see the time. So, how many people get to interview their mother on the radio? How many people would want to interview their mother?
Well, I'm very flattered. But, yes, and the show is called Pop with Pallas. Well, my life started to pop with Pallas in many other ways. At any rate, I'll let her take it from there.
Well, anyway, we're going to have to save some for the show. So,
yes, definitely.
Last week, when we did the Happiness Idea, it was during this time slot, and I had a pink wig on and very big bulbous earrings. That's the only way to describe them. They were like little balloons or little bubbles. Because I was told that we were coming in costume, and I was the only one in costume. So Patricia drew a mustache on her face. That was very different. That was it. And we had birthday cake. And so I celebrated my 50th birthday, and Mom celebrated her 79th. And now we are on in 5, 4, 3.
Wait for the intro. This is the day. Just wait until it clicks over 1 per hour. Hang on.
Hello, you. Yes, I mean you. Are you ready to make your life pop? Well, then welcome to Pop with Pallas. Find out how to follow your passion, discover your purpose, and express it with personality. Learn from people who figured out how to do it and are willing to share, because they, guess what, want to make your life pop too. Welcome, everybody. You might have guessed, I'm Pallas, and you might know me from The Happiness Idea, a passion project and radio show that I help host too. And I am also joined by Tony Kemp in the studio and on the soundboard. Hey, Tony.
Hello.
He is one of our Happiness Idea hosts as well, but I just could not let go of those mellifluous tones, so he's going to be joining us to introduce our music portion of this show and ask questions of our guests about their reasons for being so passionate about the music they choose. So, Pop with Pallas. Why? Because my company is called Pop, and Pop stands for the power of passion, purpose, and personality. And believe me, I am more than aware that these words are overused, so much so that they can lose their meaning and can wash right over you if you do not break them down and unpack what they really mean and how they apply to you and your life. So I've broken them down in the POP process, and my special guest here, if you are watching on Facebook Live, was just holding up the workbook, the POP process.
There we are.
And on the cover of that is something called the Bomb Bomb model. And the Bomb Bomb model is based on the many layers of a chocolate, because if you're talking about layers of personality, we didn't want to talk about onions, my co-author and I. So the Bomb Bomb model starts with what's at its core, which is your core talents. That is the nut or the nougat at the center of a wonderful multi-layered chocolate. The next layer are your caramel layer, your passions and your values. And then the next layer is the crunch layer, which is your skills and your life experience. And finally, we talk about candy coding, and so much of us get this. It's the signals you send in the world around you. Tony, I have discussed this idea before, and you've always just watched and listened. Do you
I
get
wasn't
it?
listening.
And you weren't listening that time? Do you understand that, what it means and what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'd have to look into it a bit more deeply to get my own...
Take on it. Well,
yeah, my own layers matching it up. But
well, that's the whole idea of this radio show, is that we do have a chance to sort of break it down and see, what is my core?
my core would definitely be caramel, but yeah, I understand.
I'm with you on that.
Your core, among other things, is musical talent, which has
Yes.
just come to you throughout.
Yeah, I think musical talent, entertainment, like I just love, one thing I do love is going to big concerts and seeing the big stage and the gear and just that. I mean, I'd rather be on stage, but
Yes.
just that, it's just a thrill in itself, you know, like
Yeah.
all the big structures they use and
So you're drawn to it.
backstage
Yeah.
and yeah, oh, big time. Even when I've done a bit of work with theatre groups and, you know, being behind the scenes and the curtain opening and closing and lights. And
So that is your caramel layer. That is your passions, but it ties in with one of your core talents, which is music. I call Tony our resident rock star because he is.
definitely music has always been a big part of my life, whether it's just listening or songs having huge effect on me. And being a 70s child, the 80s songwriting is just, I just can't stop listening to it.
Yeah. Well, and playing
Yeah.
it more importantly.
And, well, yeah, and playing it.
Because that is your core talent. And here I'm struggling with you because, and this is what I find with the people that I work with, is that they struggle to own their talents and the value that they bring to the world. They're happy to talk about what they love, which you did, but not necessarily share that, you know, this is what I'm good at doing because it's uncomfortable.
Good.
So
And I'm on here too.
yeah. But that's what I want to get across, is that what you're owning is what you can share with the world. And it's not just about bragging, this is who I am. It's about this is how I can serve you. So that is the point of the Bomb Bomb model, getting people to really drill down to the core and then get clear on their passions and values and how they tie in with what they do so well. And then what they turn that into in the outside world. But, you know, I thought today that I would start my first show with somebody who has built a life that pops. Someone who laid the foundation for both who I am and the work that I do. I learned from what she taught me as well as what I observed of her. And you can hear her as you've been hearing throughout the show because there's a lot to observe. Patricia is my mother. She happens to be visiting from New Zealand, or rather visiting New Zealand from the U.S. And maybe I'm nervous, Mom. I'm tripping over my words, but
Sorry
welcome.
about that.
You have
Thank you.
graciously and bravely agreed to let me interview you.
Well, I'm very flattered that she wants to. What mother wouldn't be, right?
Right, but you know how direct I can sometimes be.
I'm aware of that.
And of course, you know, today you're going to learn how inspiring my mother is. Of course, I feel that she's inspiring, but also how very like all of us she is. And this ties into what Tony and I were talking about. A real representation with this struggle to own your value. And I'm going to start because, you know, you were raised in the deep South in the States, in
The
Georgia.
last vestiges of the Deep South, which
Yeah.
means quite a bit. There were some perks, there were some good things, but there were also those things which weren't uncommon with most women in the world at that time. I'm talking about the 40s. And yes, the most important thing for a young lady at that time was their appearance. Now, that has changed a bit, but not 100%. Still, appearance is important for all of us, but nonetheless, it's not who you are completely. Appearance was certainly treasured far more than intellect or other possibilities. I always enjoyed listening to people and asking questions and such, and then I was taught it was rude. Well, okay, I didn't think it was too rude, I just wanted to know the people. For instance, Tony's a good example. I walked in, and after hearing him speak about, 10 seconds, I said, "You sing?" And he said, "Yes." He didn't say, "I'm a singer." He said, "Yes, I sing." And he is a singer. And so, well, you'll own that before this hour is over.
And here's where the directness comes out. You
Yes.
are dancing around what I talked about. You know, in the South, they had the candy coating down pat.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And the candy coating does help you throughout life insofar as you do check the mirror before you walk out the door, because you don't want to alarm people. And you also do want to make the most of what you have been given in this life.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's
Yes.
talk about you were expected to dress a certain way.
Oh, definitely. There were rules.
Skirts, heels.
Oh, for church, there were gloves and hats. And you never wore white shoes after September the 1st. Heavens, that was quite a faux pas.
You always did
And
your hair.
that showed ignorance also. Oh, of course you always did your hair. And, oh, by the way, after 50, you had to cut your hair short. Well, I'm 79, and I'm afraid it's not there yet. And it's not going to be for a while, because when I'm at home, I wear a Pocahontas pigtail when I'm around my house.
But that's now, and
Yes,
this
that's
was then.
now.
And
This
I
was
do
then,
have to
yes.
say that this is in the South, where I have been told, standing in a post office line, if you put a smile on that face, you sure would be prettier.
Oh,
And
yes.
where a
Oh,
standard
yes.
greeting as we left the room was "Be sweet now," you hear?
Oh, my son.
So
Yes,
the
yes.
candy coating, this is what you learned to master as a child, because it was
Of
part
course.
of your upbringing.
It was the culture.
It was the
culture.
And
Definitely.
while some of that has changed,
Yes.
human nature hasn't changed. So we still know that we judge one another
Oh.
in 7 seconds or less,
Oh,
some studies
indeed.
show, on appearance.
Yes.
So you became sort of a master of interpreting body language as well. That became a strength of yours.
Well, yes, it is a strength of mine, and sometimes it can turn on me, because then I realize I'm projecting the wrong image, such as being far too silly sometimes. So forgive me when I get that way. At any rate, remember, I used to write a lot of children's works, music and writings and such. And someone said, "You must think like a child." I said, "Yes, that's one of my strengths. But I can also think like an adult, especially when it's called for."
Well, you also rebelled and rejected a life that was focused solely on that candy coating
Yes,
and
yes, I did.
living up to the cultural norms and expectations and looking
Yes.
a certain way, because you rebelled. You moved overseas to
Yes.
Europe, and you dared to treat your life as an adventure. And very few people back then, this was in the early 1960s by then, right?
No, it was, well, yes, the very early 1960s, but I was also rejecting the new wave of hippies at that time. I did not appreciate their values, because they were just anathema to me in many ways. I couldn't see the value in smoking pot. Now, I did smoke cigarettes because that was a rite of passage, and I looked more sophisticated. I was in college at 16, university, and I wanted to look older. Well, that was going to happen soon enough, but I tried it with cigarettes then. But that was one of the values I did not like. But yes, I wanted to leave part of the culture that I found very disquieting and unpleasant. And my brother was overseas, so that gave me a very good entree. He was in the military, and I knew I could just go over there, and if I didn't get a job immediately, I wasn't going to starve. So that's what I did.
So no surprise that I'm in New Zealand, because
No.
she set the stage for just moving and following what your values and interests and
Yes.
passions are.
Yes.
So, but we were talking about the South. I'd
Yes,
like
I'll
Tony
go
to
back.
introduce our first song today, because it sort of ties into your upbringing.
Oh, indeed.
Sure, this is a Summertime by Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald.
And written by George Gershwin. One of them. And please.
It's on.
Okay.
That was good.
Thank you.
You were talking tight in, even though
Cool.
It's a long song.
Yes, we'll dip out.
Yeah.
So we have 19 minutes left. So
it's just under 5 minutes.
we'll talk about the big band, which happened before you went over. But this is, you talked about writing children's music, and then, okay, but I do want to talk about that.
Sure.
So, Tony, did you want to ask her why she chose this?
Yep.
And then maybe your answer can be, well, I love big band music.
Sure.
And in fact, I sang with. And then I can just get into, but you struggle to even call yourself a musician.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, it didn't help that the musicians union did not call vocalists musicians either.
Mm-hmm.
I was a pianist also.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Did you tour around
yeah.
when you were 18?
Yes. From Maine
Is
to
it?
Texas.
Did
Oh,
you ever
no.
meet any stars like Buddy Rich or Gene Krupa, drummers?
Yes, actually I did. I met Gene Krupa.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Wow, that's quite trippy, buzzy, sweet as. Wow. Did you have a conversation with him or just?
Briefly, yeah. He was too busy playing because that's what we wanted to hear.
He was quite a showman, apparently.
Oh, yes, he was. Yes, he danced when he drummed, basically.
Yeah.
I'm just saying his movements were so fluid. Really very interesting.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Not many people can say that, I imagine.
Yeah, well, not many people know.
Did you go to Woodstock?
No. No, I was in Germany at that time.
Yeah, sorry, you just said.
It wasn't my scene. It was not my scene.
But we did live in Eugene, Oregon when we moved back to the States after I came along.
Right.
And she was a middle school choir director, and she did Godspell and, you know, all these kind of, I thought they were rather hippie-ish kind of.
Well, they were in their own way, but they were also good music.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I think so.
But we lived a very granola lifestyle.
Oh,
there.
yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
That's because we didn't have much money.
Sorry, one more band question.
Yeah.
Did you ever see a band that were legendary but no longer around because the singer died, or
Well,
yeah, like I'm talking the Doors or Janis Joplin or Queen or
that was a bit later.
sorry?
They were a bit later. Yes, I saw some bands. The Glenn Miller Band. I saw the reformed Glenn Miller Band. People like that. Yes, because they will take those names and run with it.
Glenn Miller, is he the one that died in the
Yes,
plane went missing?
precisely. Mm-hmm.
And did you actually see Glenn?
No.
Oh, you saw the revival.
I saw the band following.
Right.
They took his repertoire, and that sort of thing. Now, the band that I sang with was the Tommy Dorsey Band. It was right after he died, but it was with Warren Covington. But we still had Jane Dorsey guiding us, and I did meet Art Mooney, and that was another big name at that time. I sang with him in Florida. But yes, it was an interesting introduction to the world of entertainment that I felt I didn't fit into that particular niche. It wasn't comfortable for me because of my southern upbringing.
Right.
Life
also,
on the road with the band.
Right, but it was also
And the
just because of my
compromises.
inner values. It conflicted.
Yeah.
And I found I was a much stronger woman.
Was there a lot of booze and drugs and stuff like
No,
that back then?
no, there wasn't too much. There were a couple of younger musicians who drank an awful lot of cough medicine that had something in it, I forget what.
Probably codeine
Wasn't-
or something.
Codeine, I think it was, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Wasn't Ella?
Yeah.
Was it her or
It was,
one of them was a junkie? Eh?
yeah, it wasn't
No, it wasn't
Ella.
Ella.
It was,
Billie Holiday.
yes.
Yes,
that's
yes,
what it
Billie
was.
Holiday.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Because when I read about her, I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't realise that
Yes.
happened back then.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, indeed. Oh,
But
it
that's
even
my
happened in the
maybe
20s.
my naivety.
Maybe we should dip out soon.
Yeah.
And you can ask her about
It's just
this.
about finished.
Oh, okay.
We can. Do you want to finish it or
Fade out,
we've got
fade
10
out.
seconds
Okay.
anyway?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, 10 seconds, right.
Welcome back to Pop With Pallas. That was Summertime by Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald. Patricia,
Yes.
is that your favourite song ever, or is that just your favourite
Well,
one today? I mean,
it
Summertime, it was a beautiful morning.
It was. Oh, yes. And
This
I'm
morning.
here in the summertime, right? It's almost summertime. No, is it spring?
It's almost-
no,
Spring.
It's almost summertime.
It's,
Okay.
at least it's called
For me, it's
summertime.
not quite warm enough to call it either. However,
Fair
I
enough.
live in Savannah, Georgia. So
This
that's
is
the
Wellington,
reason.
though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but yes, summertime is one of my all-time favorites. I have many of those, but that was the first American folk opera, so to speak, and it was written about a story in Charleston, South Carolina, by a newspaperman that happened to be an ancestor of my husband's. At any rate, he enticed the Gershwins to come down and learn about the Southern music, and it ended up being the story of Porgy and Bess, which is really well known.
And did
worldwide.
you sing it when you sang
Oh.
with the Tommy Dorsey Band?
Yes, I did. I was 18 at that time. I could sing those high notes at times, but yes, and it remained in my repertoire. I'm also a pianist, but I preferred singing along with that one.
Well,
because it
so
was
here
very
we've
melodic.
tripped over this really important fact
Okay.
that when you were 18 and before you moved to Europe, you were asked to sing in a very well-known band and go on tour.
Well, prior to that, when I'm saying being reared in the South had certain advantages and disadvantages, well, every young woman took keyboard, piano, and ballet, and then they learned to play bridge, which I did not do. But I did continue with my piano. It seemed that I did have a talent there, and I used to love to sit down. People called it banging. I called it playing by ear, which I still do. But I also did learn proper keyboard, and at age 12, I played with the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, and I played Liebestraum. I wish I could do that today. I cannot.
Well, but I'll tell you what, because I've always known you as a pianist, a piano
Yes.
teacher, someone with a master's in music, a singer who sang with the Tommy Dorsey Band,
Yes.
and yet only recently
Yes.
have you actually embraced the title musician.
Well, yes, that's true. In my 60s, early 60s perhaps, it suddenly occurred to me when people would say, well, what do you do? What is your name? Who are you? And I would say, well, I'm so-and-so's mother. I'm so-and-so's wife. And then I thought, well, you know, I think I'm a little more than that. I said, well, actually, I'm a musician. Well, what do you do? Well, I used to sing. I always appropriately put, well, that was appropriate at the time, because I think you do max out on your
Yes,
your
but
prime
you
time.
also continue to perform piano.
Oh,
and,
indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
And I continue
But you
to sing,
struggled.
too.
My point is you
Yes,
struggled
I struggled with
to
identifying myself as a musician because I didn't think, all right, I have never played in Carnegie Hall, therefore I am just a pianist of some sort, and rather a good sort, because I always got asked to do it every place I was, frequently without pay.
Yeah, but does this resonate with you, Tony? Just being able to own that talent? You remember when I asked you in the beginning, you said, well, I enjoy and I'm drawn to and I'm, really passionate about listening to music, but you never said, I'm a musician and this is what I do, So,
True.
yeah. It's just...
And hey, I've played the Kevin Club, so I should be a musician.
Yes, so you did.
wow.
What is that exactly?
Kevin Club, that's where the Beatles started.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
And he's a drummer as well as a singer, which he hasn't said yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah. But no, this is what's so fascinating.
I think we're all musicians, so that's why I
Well,
said, oh, I'm a musician.
Pallas
'cause
sings, yes.
and we
she
all
was
enjoy
great.
music. I mean,
Well,
Indeed,
but
indeed.
enjoying and being able to perform are two different things.
and
so-
communicate as well.
And in order to teach it, because I used to say to my students in high school, get high on music instead of other things. And frequently they did. In fact, we got called down for having a very noisy classroom. But what do you expect when you're teaching music?
And
So-
you also composed. And
Yes.
I do have to say that some of what finally made you own up to your strengths were some extreme experiences.
Extreme. is
And
right.
one of them was that our family moved to Saudi Arabia. And I was
Yes.
asking you as we were driving here, what was it about that experience that sort of stripped away the outer layers of how we identified who we were and stripped us down to who we really were in terms of our talents and our passions, etc.?
Well, that's a very good question. And when I first went abroad, it was to Germany, where I said I had a fallback, my brother. But there were many Americans. I didn't leave my upbringing behind me, but I did break loose, and I learned German, and I learned to drink some beer, and these things that a lady never did. At any rate, then I met your father, and we decided to marry. We married in Greece. We decided if we had children, we would name them geographically. And so, therefore, I had Pallas, the goddess of wisdom and beauty, and see how well that worked out. And so, at any rate, then later on, we had another child, Kurt, and that was to represent our German attachment. And then he came home one day and said, we're moving to Saudi Arabia. And I said, well, perhaps you are, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Well, we moved. The hard part was leaving them in boarding schools, but that was one of the reasons, because they certainly were given beautiful educations that
But
way.
it stripped away your identity
It did
as
strip away
full-time
my
mother
overnight.
overnight.
Totally. So here I am living in Saudi Arabia, wearing an abaya and staying home thinking, where am I going? How did I get here? And I went to a women's meeting once, and someone had a radio show. I love radio. And she interviewed me on the show, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm trying to bring out the Arabian, the Middle Eastern modes with Western modes, and write children's music. And she said, oh. So from that, I received a call from the Ministry of Information, who were egged on by some members of the royal family. They were going to start a children's show. And they asked me to come in and audition to be a composer as well as a librettist. And I thought, that's right up my alley.
And in the end, a
So-
puppeteer.
Yes. Oh, yes. That was my most
So-
famous role in life.
So that's what you became.
yes.
So then when people asked, what did you do? You were a composer and a puppeteer and
Yes.
a librettist, which
Yes.
is the first time I've heard you use that phrase, which means
Which means I wrote skits and scripts for the two major stars. One was Jamel the camel, and I was Enter the goat. So I could do that very well. But it was great fun, and we had an international audience of children. So when my children came into Kingdom, I, of course, brought them with me to the studio, and that's how Pallas's television career got kicked off.
Well, and so interestingly, this is what happens.
Yes.
You know, we were thrown into extreme situations.
Yes.
I was thrown in front of a camera and told to speak. It was on an
That's
English-speaking channel, fortunately, because
However,
I couldn't have done
that
it
was
in
because
Arabic.
you walked in and you spoke to French and some of the children in German, and your brother walked in and
it
spoke
was
to them in Arabic, etc. So they said, oh, they work for us.
It was an international audience.
Yes.
But my point is, we were thrown in the deep end.
Yes,
And when you're thrown in the
totally.
deep end, sometimes that's when it becomes obvious what you do well, or you know what your strengths are. Basically, you don't know how strong you are until
That's
you're
correct.
tested.
That's correct.
So we had that experience in Saudi.
Yes, we did.
And then we shared another experience. And again, I spoke with you before we
Yes.
came on air
Mhm.
to make sure that this was okay to talk
Yes,
about, but we
it
both
is.
agreed
It
that
is.
this needs to be talked about.
Yes.
And that was losing your son and my brother to suicide.
Our beautiful, wonderful Kurt Houpe. Well, I must say this. The reason I'd like to speak about it is because I think Pallas and I both have a tendency to be altruistic in our desires of wanting to help people. And I want to help all mothers particularly and family members to know that you do always have a hollow spot in your heart, but you grow from that, and then you're grateful for the life they led and the life that they're presently living, just on a different plane.
But
And
also,
anyway.
I think it's important because life is short, and this
Oh,
is a
Totally,
motto which
totally
I'll
short, yes.
tell
Well,
you later.
I will mention that my son had a horrible accident when he was 11. He had a diving accident which damaged his brain, but it didn't show up for years. And then at age 33, after he'd already spoken at the UN, spoke 4 languages, was president of his class 3 years, etc., he had another horrible accident. He was catapulted while he was racing his bicycle and was thrown 12 feet and landed in the same area. Well, from then on, he put it succinctly to me several years after that, "Mom, you know, I'm dying one brain cell at a time." And my heart stopped, but I think I knew it. And then going from this elevated position of having most friends adore him and so forth, he was suddenly thrust down, and then he started having seizures, etc. His life was miserable, and he called me, he said, "Mom, I'm a pariah."
Well, I think that's where he ended up, although in the end we both agree that he's in a better place. I
Yes.
think the meaning of this is he had so much to give to the world, and he
did.
gave at
He
every
did.
turn.
At every level.
He helped, you know, when
Mhm.
people pass away, you find out how many lives they've touched. And
Amen.
people came out of the woodwork to let us
Oh,
know.
people
And he-
wrote from abroad. I had people that he'd known in his dormitory at Duke helping. I had so many people contact me from everywhere that I was totally stunned. But the point that I was trying to make is Kurt lived an extraordinary life, as
Yes.
Pallas is fond of saying. He was well loved, and he had the most wonderful female
Soul
friend.
mate.
Oh,
Yes.
soulmate, absolutely. God gave him that gift. And so
And he
when
gave
I-
him so many gifts. And
absolutely.
yeah.
He was very, very talented in many things. But what I'm trying to get to is we do go on. And we then look back and see all the wonderful things that he had in his life. And he met the Dalai Lama. He went everywhere. We rounded the world on a trip. And we just had some marvelous experiences. And when life began to turn on him, he decided to go live with God. And that was his choice. And I'm glad for him. It's taken us a longer adjustment period.
Yes, it
But
has.
now
but
we're trying to help others understand that you do not heal, but you go to a different plane yourself.
well, you do heal, and you begin to appreciate. You
Yes.
appreciate just what we've been talking
Oh,
about.
absolutely.
The talents that we've been
Yes.
given.
Oh, God bless, yes.
We understand that life is limited, and the time to
Mhm.
pursue our passions, you know, is short. And so, don't be afraid. Don't shy away.
Own them now.
Yep. Own your value now, and share your value with the world.
Yes.
And you can do that even if you don't feel qualified to do it, as you struggled with throughout
Yes.
your life story. You upskilled. You got a master's in music. There are ways to build on those talents and those passions and create something that is
Yes.
recognized
Yes.
and that you can then share as a value with the world. And you can come up with new ones.
Yes.
Upskilling. My mother is visiting me, and I am having her complete a novel that she is writing. It's
Yes.
the first thing that she's ever written in her life
Well,
at age 79.
first serious thing that I've ever
Yes.
written in my life. And
So-
yes, it's great fun. It's a good challenge, and my daughter throws down the gauntlet and makes me act properly.
But again, it's because you have been this mixture of having been formed by the life that you led in the Deep
Yes.
South, very structured, learning how it was important to present yourself, but then being brave enough and thrown into situations extreme enough to step out and go through those different layers of the Bomb Bomb model and honor your values and follow your passions and
Yes, I
that
have
crunch,
done
adding to it with life experience and training. And then now we're at the stage where all of that is showing in its radiance at 79, which is just a phenomenally inspiring story.
Thank you, Mela.
I certainly hope it inspires those of you who are listening and watching on our
Yes.
Facebook Live. And it's more stories like these that I would like to tell in the coming weeks. Talking to people, who are in our community, talking to Tony more, and digging into that a little bit, challenging him to own what he brings to this world because
That's
he
the
does
one.
so much. Yeah. And I'm going to do that on this show and podcast, Pop with Pallas. If you have inspiring stories out there, please share them
Definitely.
on this Facebook page or on the Facebook pages that I will be sharing, Make Life Pop and Pallas Who Pay Cotter. I'm just going to have to put that on the Access Radio website. It's just too much to remember right now. But the point is, find me online, share your stories. I would love to share them with you here. We don't have time for another piece of music today, but Tony's going to be sharing with us in the future weeks some of his favorite pieces.
Wonderful.
Is there anything that strikes you about today's conversation? Any last question that you wanted to ask?
No, it was very interesting. Yeah,
thank you.
legendary is the word I'd use.
Oh,
Well,
thank you.
and it's something that again,
And it is
Yeah.
it's quite interesting to hear you talk about your son and your brother.
Yes.
That's really awesome.
We
And I
hope.
hope someone
We hope we
is
can
listening
help
and
others.
can, because I mean everyone goes through that differently, and there's no right or
Of
wrong
course.
way. But it is sad when you see some people held back by those kind of incidents. They don't
Yes,
quite get
precisely.
over them, and then their life becomes
Yeah.
trapped almost.
yeah,
Kurt would not have wanted that.
no, but
Yeah.
he would have wanted everyone to live the life that they deserve, to live
Yes.
a life outside, not it matches who you are, and then some, on the inside, the life on the outside you lead matches who you are on the inside, and he wouldn't want anyone hiding in their bubble.
Exactly.
I want to share my mantra with you as we leave you today, and that is life is short, make it pop, make it extraordinary. Thanks for tuning in to
Thank you.
Pop with Pallas, and thank you, Patricia Carson Dupay Ginlat, for joining us today on the
My
show.
pleasure
And thank you,
and
Tony.
my honor. Thank you.
No worries.
And we will
Thanks.
see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching.
Lots of thank yous there.
They were deserved.
There you go. It was hitting the table. So.
Oh. Trust me.
Okay, guys.
Tony, if someone wants to
Let me know what you
also
think.
was a realtor.
I'm going to be doing this more frequently, and I will see you soon.
My daughter said this.